Welcome to Talking Acting. Last time we were discussing turning points, the turning points that apply to three-act structure and how critical those turning points are for the development of the story, and therefore the actor's understanding of how turning points work is important. I didn't mention last week that, of course, there are turning points in one-act stories. I was just focusing on three-act stories, but one-act stories have turning points too. In fact, one-act stories have the same structure as a joke, don't they? That you've got a difficulty that engages the audience's interest. You get something that increases the difficulty, and then you have a turn, which is an unexpected turn. And that's where the laugh comes. So jokes, like short films, are one-act structures, and one-act structures also have turning points. But this time, I want to specifically focus on how do you play a turning point when you have a turning point in the scene you're in. So, because they don't happen very often, turning points in scenes are rare, as they are in conversations in life. We don't get much practice at playing them, so it's easy to miss them and therefore easy to make mistakes. And so if you don't play the impulses that are generated that create a turning point in the conversation, then the lines become uncomfortable. They don't quite make sense. And the dialogue then isn't serving the delivery of a story or the intended story. So we need to make sure that because we don't do them often, that we're not rusty when the opportunity arises. And I've seen actors entirely miss the point, and the ending of the scene therefore fail. The first step is to actually understand what a turning point is, and a turning point is a change in the direction of the conversation. If the conversation doesn't change direction, if it doesn't have a new purpose, then it's not a turning point. So turning points are generated generally by surprises, often big surprises, new information coming in. However, you will play lots of scenes that have big surprises in them that don't generate turning points. The most common result of a big surprise is that the difficulty you're experiencing goes up, but it doesn't change the direction of what you're doing. What it's just increased is the difficulty in achieving what you're pursuing. And so there can be big surprises that increase the drama in the story, push story along, but don't generate turning points. The reason that a turning point occurs is that your character, therefore you are the character, suddenly realizes something. And so it's actually really helpful, if you want to deliver a planned turning point, that you label clearly what that realization is, so that you know what you're looking for when you're doing the scene. Now, inevitably, when you do this, because of your reading skills, you will recognize the line on which that realization will happen. But here's the catch. That's only going to occur if the actor opposite you delivers the line in a way that generates the realization. If they don't, you're just going to punch on, pursuing your purpose in the conversation. Right? Because if the line hasn't come at you in a way that generates the realization, if the penny doesn't drop, then you're not going to be like the character who realizes a change is needed and therefore makes one. You will just be like an actor who goes, oh, now I have to do this. and that will be transparent. So the value in labelling what the realisation is, although your mind will surely attach it to a specific moment of dialogue in the scene, is that you can now look out for when your character gathers enough information for that realisation to occur. So the moment of realisation should be organic. It should happen when it happens, and then it will be real. So I've seen actors nominate a line of dialogue where they feel that's where the turning point's going to happen. They confidently feel that. But when they're playing the scene, there's such an active dynamic going on at that point that they keep pursuing their course in the conversation, and the turning point doesn't happen on that line. And I've seen actors get to the last line of dialogue, to the end of the scene, and the turning point still hasn't happened. But then the actor that needs to have the realisation can, after the dialogue's finished even, suddenly realise where they've got to. And then the turning point can happen. So turning points are going to happen organically at the point that you gather the information that generates the realisation that you need to change the direction of the conversation. Now, the information that generates that realisation can be that external force, like new facts, or you realise that your assumptions to this point are based erroneously. So it might be something new that you didn't understand until this point that causes a change in direction. But it can also be that you suddenly realise that your course of action is disrupting the relationship more than you want it to. And so you need to make a course of action to save the relationship. And that's more of an internal realisation rather than one that's forced on you externally. So there are a variety of possibilities that can generate that realisation. But the key to turning points is that your character realises that they now need to change the direction of the conversation because they now have a new purpose. That's the key to turning point scenes. I'll be talking more acting, same time next week. Cheers.